In this video, we'll be taking a look at 4 college football games happening on December 27, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 8 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 4 college football games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Pittsburgh versus East Carolina. Pittsburgh put together a solid year in Atlantic Coast Conference play, finishing at 8-4 overall. They now get a shot to cap things with a bowl win against an East Carolina team that also finished 8-4. Pittsburgh stumbled a bit late, dropping 2 of the last 3. The big story on their side was at quarterback, where Eli Holstein went down earlier in the year and freshman Mason Heinzkel stepped in. He ended up as their top passer with 2,098 yards and 15 touchdowns, which is no small thing for a young quarterback trying to steady the ship. On the ground, Jacurian Turner was the main piece, finishing with 652 rushing yards and 7 scores. East Carolina, on the other hand, closed strong, taking 5 of their final 6 games. That late push helped the Pirates finish near the top of the American Conference. Senior quarterback Kattenhauser led their passing game with 3,300 yards and 19 touchdowns, and he clearly had a favorite target. Anthony Smith topped the receivers with 897 yards and 5 touchdowns, giving them a reliable 1-2 connection in the passing game. My first reaction looking at this matchup was that East Carolina might hang around if enough key Pittsburgh players decided not to play. But it actually flipped the other way once you look at who is sitting. It is East Carolina that took the bigger hit through the transfer portal and bold decisions. Hauser and Smith, that quarterback and receiver duo that carried so much of the offense, will both sit this game out. They will also be without their leading rusher, London Montgomery, who finished the year with 742 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. On top of that, the offensive coordinator, John David Baker, and defensive coordinator, Josh Aldridge, have already moved on to new jobs at another school. So you are talking about a team missing its signal caller, top back, number 1 wideout, and both coordinators. That is a lot of pieces to replace in one game, especially a bowl where rhythm matters. Pittsburgh, by contrast, stays mostly intact. Their core players are expected to go, and that kind of continuity counts when you get deep into December. There was even a point earlier in the season when Pittsburgh was floating around as a fringe playoff hopeful before that loss to Notre Dame pulled them back to earth. You can almost feel this game being used as a reset button for them, a chance to remind people how good they looked at their peak. From a spread angle, both teams share that 8-4 label, but Pittsburgh is still a sizable favorite for a reason. The Panthers have had their issues on defense, giving up 28 or more points in 4 of their last 5 games, so they are not exactly a shutdown unit. Even so, with East Carolina missing Hauser, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, the Pirates are suddenly staring at a depth chart that does not inspire much confidence. Their alternative choices at quarterback simply have not shown enough to suggest they can keep the passing game humming at anything close to its usual level. Both teams have players missing, but Pittsburgh clearly comes in with far fewer disruptions to its main contributors. That stability should show up in the way they move the ball and in how often they are able to extend drives. Heinzkel had a strong year filling in, and this is the kind of spot where a young quarterback can treat the bowl as a springboard. He will want to finish on a high note and build momentum heading into next season, and the matchup sets up nicely for him against a short-handed opponent. All of that leans me toward Pittsburgh having the better chance to not just win, but to cover the number with some room to breathe in this one. As our first pick for this matchup, the Pittsburgh Panthers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Bowl games can sometimes turn into track meets, but this setup feels different, more like a game that grinds a bit. The Pirates are likely to struggle running the ball against this Panthers front, especially without London Montgomery as their lead back. That puts even more pressure on Wright Jr., who simply has not thrown much this season, with only 7 attempts all year. Expecting him to suddenly carry the offense is a big ask, and it is hard to see this attack consistently marching up and down the field. Pitt, for its part, should still be able to score. They have enough talent and familiarity in their scheme to get into the high 20s. Something in that 27-point range for them feels reasonable, especially with Heinzel trying to put some good film out there. But beyond that, you probably should not count on a full-blown offensive explosion. On top of everything, East Carolina has been tough in the red zone defensively. They rank 6th in opponent red zone touchdown percentage at 40.4% and 8th nationally in opponent red zone scoring percentage at 71.4%. That kind of stubbornness inside the 20s tends to shave points off the final score. So even if Pittsburgh moves the ball, there is a decent chance you see drives ending in field goals or even empty trips instead of a parade of touchdowns. When you combine a depleted Pirates offense, an inexperienced quarterback, a missing coordinator, and a red zone defense that bends but does not break, it points more toward a lower scoring outcome than the posted total suggests. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Penn State versus Clemson. The idea of Penn State and Clemson meeting at Yankee Stadium feels almost like a weird sports movie crossover. Two blue bloods, but instead of lining up in a college football playoff game, they are dropped into the Pinstripe Bowl right before New Year's. If someone had pitched this matchup back in September, most people would have guessed a semifinal, not a midweek game in the Bronx. So the real question hanging over this one is simple: which team handles that emotional reset better? From the number side, this opened with Clemson giving a field goal plus the hook to Penn State. That kind of price is usually very inviting for anyone who wants to grab the underdog, because getting 3.5 with a team like Penn State feels comfortable. The market clearly agreed, and money on Penn State pulled this down to a flat field goal. Even with that, there is more here than just a small shift off the opener. Coaching is a big piece of this. You are essentially talking Terry Smith on one sideline against Dabo Swinney on the other. If you are being honest with yourself, you know which way most people lean in that comparison. Dabo has made a career out of turning any situation into fuel, and he will absolutely spin this bowl into a prove-something spot for his locker room, even after a season that went sideways compared to expectations. Penn State should have plenty of fans in New York, no doubt. But that extra noise in the stands does not usually tilt things much against a team that has lived on big stages for years. Clemson is used to national spotlights, neutral sites, and the kind of weird energy that comes with playing in a baseball stadium. So while both brands carry weight and both fan bases travel, the overall setup still leans toward Clemson handling the stage and the circumstances a bit better. That, combined with the coaching edge and the way the number sits now, makes the Tigers the side that feels more trustworthy to win this chess match against the spread, not just on the scoreboard. As our first pick for this matchup, the Clemson Tigers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Penn State has built itself around defense first. That has been its core personality all season. The offense can move the ball, but it tends to be slow, structured, and patient rather than explosive, especially against a front that can match its physicality. That kind of style naturally squeezes the scoreboard. Clemson, in a lot of ways, mirrors that approach. The Tigers probably carry a bit more upside on offense, but they still look most comfortable when the game is controlled through their defense, field position, and pressure that forces opponents into errors. Their defensive line and linebackers are good enough to clog Penn State's run game and force long yardage situations. Those are exactly the types of situations that stall drives, chew clock, and keep the total from soaring. This feels like the kind of bowl that is decided right at the line of scrimmage. A lot of snaps will look like a tug of war rather than a track meet. You can almost see it turning into a full-on rock fight, where every yard is contested and every possession feels heavier than it should. Both staffs will be making quiet adjustments, playing chess with coverages and fronts, not just tossing the ball around and hoping for a shootout. In that setup, points become precious. Field position suddenly becomes the star of the show. You can easily imagine this coming down to the final drive, maybe even a single late possession, with one key mistake or one smart call tilting things. With margins that thin, nothing about this really screams high scoring. It would not be surprising if this game never gets close to the mid-30s in total points. So the lean is clear toward a lower scoring script, where both defenses keep the lid on and the offenses are forced to grind for every scoring opportunity. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Connecticut versus Army. Connecticut is coming into this one fresh off a tight win over a struggling FAU team. and tight might even feel generous when you look at the numbers they allowed. The Huskies gave up a massive 687 yards, with 494 of those through the air, 7.9 yards per play, 37 first downs, and 8 of 15 conversions on third down. That is the kind of defensive stat line that keeps coordinators awake at night. On the flip side, Connecticut's offense absolutely showed up. They rolled to 600 yards of their own, moved the chains for 31 first downs, and went 6 of 13 on third down. The one big self-inflicted wound was the 10 penalties for 105 yards, which is basically spotting your opponent an extra field's worth of mistakes. Even with that, the season profile on this Huskies offense is very clear. They average a strong 36.9 points per game, with 300.5 passing yards per contest. Through the air, they have piled up 30 passing touchdowns against just a single interception, which is the kind of ratio most teams would happily frame on the wall. On the ground, they chip in 159 rushing yards per game and have punched in 24 scores. So this is not a one-dimensional attack. The twist is the timing. By the time they take the field here, Connecticut will have been sitting for over a month. Honestly, long layoffs before bowls can cut both ways, but in this matchup, the thought is that the break might actually tilt things a bit toward Army's preferred style. Speaking of Army, they were very close to pulling off a shocker against a strong Navy team in their last game. Even in that near upset, the Black Knights only managed 202 total yards, with 120 on the ground, 11 first downs, and a 3 of 10 mark on third down. Their identity is no mystery. They want this to be a low-scoring, run-first grind where they shorten the game and shrink the number of possessions. If Army can improve those first down totals and string together longer drives, they can keep Connecticut's offense watching from the sideline for big chunks of the afternoon. That is where things get interesting against the spread. You have a high-powered Huskies offense that can explode when it finds rhythm, matched against a methodical Army group that tries to drag everyone into the mud and slow the tempo. The tension between those two styles is exactly what makes taking the points with Connecticut appealing, since their scoring punch gives them a good chance to stay within the number even if Army successfully turns this into more of a slog. As our first pick for this matchup, the Connecticut Huskies to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. With Army, you know exactly what you are getting. They are fully committed to a disciplined, run-heavy offense that keeps the ball mostly on the ground and rarely asks the quarterback to throw. Because of that approach, the Black Knights do not typically light up the scoreboard, averaging just 22.4 points per game this season. That same style keeps the clock running, limits possessions, and helps their defense stay fresh enough to hold opponents to 22.1 points per game. Connecticut, at least on paper, is almost the opposite. The Huskies score 36.9 points per game with a pass-first, up-tempo offense that likes to push the pace and stretch the field. That version of Connecticut can turn games into track meets. But here is the thing, we are not getting that full-throttle Huskies attack in this bowl. They will be missing some of the key pieces that helped them grab 9 regular season wins. Starting quarterback Joe Fagnano, who threw for 28 touchdowns and just 1 interception this year, will not be playing in the Fenway Bowl. That alone changes the ceiling of the passing game and the comfort level on high-leverage downs. On top of that, head coach Jim Mora will not be on the sideline either, as he has taken a new job at Colorado State. That is a lot of offensive identity and leadership pulled out of the equation. If anyone was expecting Connecticut's usual tempo and scoring punch to push this game into a higher total range than Army typically plays in, their current situation makes that much harder to imagine. Army's style already drags games towards slower, lower-scoring scripts, and now Connecticut is less equipped to force a shootout. So you are left with one team that wants a grind and another that is missing the main figures that usually turn games into fireworks. That combination sets up a realistic path where the final score lands comfortably under the posted number. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Georgia Tech versus BYU. Neither Georgia Tech nor BYU expected to be lining up in this spot in late October, and that gap between what they imagined and where they actually landed sits at the heart of this matchup evaluation. Bowl games often come down less to pure talent and more to who shows up emotionally ready, and these two programs are arriving from very different mental roads. For Georgia Tech, the sting has had time to fade. Their postseason hopes effectively died in late November with a clear loss to Pittsburgh, followed by a gritty but losing effort in Atlanta against arch-rival Georgia. Those results closed the book on big dreams, but they also quietly handed the Yellow Jackets something useful, which is time. Time to absorb what went wrong. Time to reset expectations. Time to frame this bowl not as a pity prize, but as a fresh stage. With weeks to prepare and no lingering what-if scenarios hanging over them, Georgia Tech can walk into this game with a cleaner mindset and a sharper sense of purpose. BYU's emotional picture is very different. Their letdown is not only more recent, it is more brutal in scale. The Cougars went into championship weekend with a straight path to the college football playoff, only to get blasted 34-7 by Texas Tech in a game that turned into a full public unraveling at the worst possible time. Climbing back from that kind of crash is not easy, especially when the follow-up reward is a mid-tier bowl instead of the playoff stage they were chasing. You genuinely have to ask how much this group still has in the emotional tank for this setting. There is a very real chance that part of that locker room is already thinking about 2026 rather than this kickoff. On paper, BYU still holds the higher ranking, but the loss of LJ Martin cuts right into who they are. He was not just a productive runner, he was the outlet that kept their freshman quarterback in comfortable situations and ahead of schedule. Without him, the margin for error shrinks. Georgia Tech brings a more seasoned presence at quarterback with Haynes King, and their defense is fresh off a game where they went toe-to-toe with one of the most physical teams in the country. That kind of experience matters when you step into another physical contest. I expect Georgia Tech's rushing attack to have success against a BYU front that looked softening in its last two outings. That sets the stage for a tight, one-score type of game that can very easily tilt toward the Yellow Jackets if a few key plays fall their way. With motivation leaning their direction and their offensive structure in decent shape, Georgia Tech looks positioned not only to compete, but to stay inside the number with a very real shot to win outright on top of it. As our first pick for this matchup, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Shifting to the total, if Georgia Tech is going to make this bowl a success story, the path almost certainly runs through a fence, not through a slow, low-possession slugfest. They are simply not built to thrive in those muddy, grinded-out games against capable opponents. We saw what happened when they were dragged into that style against Georgia. The attack bogged down and they looked uncomfortable. When Georgia Tech either wins or hangs around against quality teams, it usually happens because the offense is humming and they are putting real numbers on the board. If the Yellow Jackets are playing the way they want, you would expect them to push into the low or mid-30s in points. That threshold has been a magic line for them, and when they cross it, their results speak for themselves. So any scenario where Georgia Tech truly shows well almost automatically nudges this toward a higher scoring script. BYU also cannot sit back and play passive if they want to succeed here. In their losses this year against Texas Tech, the defense leaked points and the Cougars had nothing in reserve to genuinely threaten the Red Raiders or keep them honest. If they want to match Georgia Tech this time, they will need to find their own scoring punch rather than hoping the defense solves everything. That need for both teams to trade blows ties neatly into a higher total outcome. Georgia Tech's defense has its own issues that feed into this. They have already allowed more than 600 yards of offense to a team like NC State and gave up 42 points to Pittsburgh in that loss to the Panthers. So BYU has every reason to believe it can find the end zone multiple times without having to play a perfect game. You can easily imagine stretches where both offenses start to trade scores and the game feels more like a track meet than a chess match. Even if you look at it from a neutral angle, any path where BYU keeps pace and Georgia Tech leans on its offense points toward a tempo where possessions turn into points more often than not. Everything in the tactics and recent defensive form of both sides hints at a contest that can climb past the 60-point range rather than staying anchored in a low-scoring grind. That is why the over fits so naturally with how this matchup is likely to play out. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.